These children not only were tied and bound and had to escape Jodi's house, but the children were completely alone, and both Ruby and Jodi were 4 hours away in Springvale, where Ruby lives. Guys, more details are coming out, and this is getting even more disturbing, so make sure and click the plus sign, because I'm going to keep you up to date on this. Sound off in the comments. I want you to tell me what you think, but this is a detail a lot of people aren't talking about. I didn't realize until just recently, and that is, we know that Russell was the one who escaped out the window, and he was able to go to a neighbor for help, and that they had tape on their extremities and looked like they had been bound and tied up. And they found Eve, similar situation, all malnourished, right? Here's what a lot of people don't know. They were not there at the time. In fact, when these two were arrested, they were arrested at Ruby's home, 4 hours away. So understand, it sounds like, and we don't have all the information, but what it sounds like, these children were tied up, bound, left in that house with no food, no way to contact anybody, to the point where they couldn't just get up and walk out. They had to escape, to the point where the information that's coming out is Russell didn't even know that there wasn't an adult there. Unreal. I want you to take a look at this clip, and then we're going to discuss. Check it out.
I want to bring in somebody who knows a lot about this case. Lauren Mathias was a reporter in southern Utah for 2 years. She knows a lot of the people in the area very well. She hosts the very popular Hidden True Crime podcast. Lauren, I was reading that Jodi Hildebrandt, Ruby Franke's partner, had a $3 million house. That's where those kids escaped from, was this $3 million house. What do you know about Jodi?
Yes, I know a lot about Jodi. She was well received in the area. She had a booming therapy business and exactly a $3 million home in a very high-end neighborhood. One interesting thing about the house is that it had this downstairs room, which most of the houses in this area, I'll say they're built by the same builder, and they do not have basements or downstairs rooms. I think that's very interesting. But she was well received in the area. She went to church. She had friends, and she clearly had a booming therapy business. My husband even ran into her at trainings. She was at the chamber meetings. She was at the Women's St. George business meetings. She was active in this community in southern Utah.
I'm trying to figure it all out, though. It's so bizarre, given that they're podcast partners, but they live like 4 to 5 hours drive apart. And the weirdness is that the children are escaping. Well, the one kid is escaping out the window of Jodi's $3 million house, but they're both arrested at Ruby's house. So Jodi's house is in Kayenta, Utah, if I pronounce that correctly, and Ruby's house is in Springvale, Utah, and they're so far apart. Why are the kids alone, 4.5 hours away?
I'm so glad you brought this up, Ashley, because I think it's something that people aren't discussing. People forget how big of a state Utah is. So they're not realizing, and it was in Ivins, Utah, the subdivision or the neighborhood is Kayenta, but they escaped the home in Ivins, Utah, in the Kayenta area. And what people aren't realizing is how far away Springville is from Ivins, Utah. And nobody's understanding that it literally means that these kids were abandoned at this house, because Springville, Utah is northern Utah. We're talking 4 hours north, at least over 300 miles north is where Ruby lived, where both Jodi and Ruby were arrested together at Ruby's house. Jodi's house is 4 hours south in southern Utah among the Red Rocks, and that's where the children escaped. I've also heard that the children didn't even know that they were alone, but they were abandoned. And I think that's something we're not talking about enough. These children were alone.
It's so bizarre. Clearly we're only at the tip of the iceberg on the story. Lauren Mathias, thank you for this. Thanks.
This brings a whole new level of insanity. Were they bound up, tied up? We don't know if they were in the panic room, exactly how they were found. We still don't have police body cam footage. That's going to take some time for all of that to come out. But there's still a lot of unknowns. But what we do know is those children were left abandoned. What looks like they were tied up with the tape on them, to the point where they were in the house, they couldn't leave. So somehow they were locked up, to the point it was so locked down that Russell had to escape out of a window. He couldn't just open the door. And wouldn't you think if he had to escape that way, he knows, or I would say that he isn't aware that there are even adults around? How do you do that? You know, it's one thing to leave your kids completely abandoned. So when I was younger, the main parent that I was with, they got to the point, it was interesting. When I was 5 years old was the first time I stayed home alone. And I remember the parent was very nervous. It was like, I'm going up to Kmart for just a little bit. Me and my sibling, who was a little bit older, stayed by ourselves. And it was fine. And we loved it. It was super fun. And it was like a slippery slope from there, because then from there, okay, let's try it for a couple hours, for a night. And then it just extended to where I was I don't know if I would say the word abandoned, but very neglected kid. And I was on my own most of the time and got more and more comfortable just leaving us to our devices, to where we didn't really have a parent around. Hardly at all, a lot of the time. And then when the parent was there, didn't want us there and would tell us to go outside and play, which that part was normal. But what I'm saying is it can be kind of a slippery slope of getting comfortable with that. And we never had babysitters, by the way, because we were told we're not going to pay for that. So, but then just think about it. Think about the concept of, so you stay home alone, you get to that point, and then you get to the point you leave them, not just leave them, you leave them hours away. You are hours, 4-hour drive away, and then you had them possibly tied up. I feel like it just brings a bigger amount of insanity as to how do you allow that to happen to your kids. And I really hope she's got some answers, because they're going to have to come out in court. I don't know. What do you guys think about this detail that we're all missing? Sound off in the comments. Click the plus sign. I've got more coming. I want to hear your guys.